people will be listening and commenting and talking about, I don't know, random stuff.
I have got a Discord account, but I don't know where you... Yeah.
Well, you can get in just by going to pcpro.link/discord if you want to try it. We've got a few minutes.
Okay.
Oh, yes, Paul Riley, you are quite correct. We do have a new face. This is real worlder Olivia Whitcroft joining us.
Hi.
I think for the first time ever in 700 odd episodes. So
Lee Grant's going to be furious because he's got another row to his
That's
spreadsheet now.
actually, Olivia, were you on one in about 2010? Or was it one of your colleagues?
I think that was Dennis. Actually.
That's right, it was Dennis.
Yeah. Okay, I'm on Discord now. Yeah.
So there should be a podcast. You should see a PC Pro server and a channel called Podcast Chat.
Is that your background noise, John? With a
Yeah, possibly is. Can we shut the window, Andre? Sorry, does it sound like building site?
yeah, very much so.
Okay, sorry, I haven't got any directional mics. I've only got this with me.
Okay.
That will be quiet now. Is that
that's
quiet now?
Much better, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, right. Just Madrid downtown construction zone.
You do stay in all the best places.
Hotel Liabeni in the centre of Madrid. I stayed here last about 20 years ago, just off Plaza de Sol.
And typically Spanish, they're still building it.
Yes, I was going to say, it's a bit of a stereotype, isn't it? Olivia, you look very worried.
No. Well, it's because I can't find you on Discord. But...
Oh, sorry. Did you go to pcpro.link/discord?
No, but I will now.
I spent like about 20 solid seconds setting up that link, so hopefully it'll pay off.
You got 2 secs? Just come and wave to the people.
Am I human?
Said you're here.
Yes.
Or are you dancing?
Andre is here. He's going to put his face in the picture.
Hello, Andre.
There you go. Everyone's happy
can't
now.
hear us.
No, he can't hear us. They said hello, and we're waving.
Right.
Oh, right. What am I talking about this week?
Fashion?
Oh, yes. Fashion. Talking of fashion, I was reading the Squire magazine earlier today. Of course, being the fashionable kind of chap I am. Have you seen the fonts they're using these days?
I saw your post about this on Threads. It's insane. I can't believe someone
I
did
just
that.
thought it was some wind-up, and I went back through 2-3 issues, and they're doing it in every issue. It's just...
What the hell?
Honestly, what are the designers must be absolutely chonking the... And we're live, aren't we?
Can you post a pic on Discord so people can see what we're talking about? I can find it if not.
Right, I'm not on a different name on Discord, obviously. Right.
Are you on?
I'm on, but you'll know my name, Darian.
Let's have a look. What could it be?
Is it Quantum Leap related by any chance?
It could
it
be.
is.
Quantum Leap box set.
Oh, it is, but you'd never guess, ever.
I've never seen a single episode of Quantum Leap. So.
Doesn't matter. You would definitely not recognise this name. It's Kasatna Sato.
Oh, Cassandra, I just said hello, not knowing it was you. Now, how about that?
Yeah.
I was just being polite, Obviously, it was vibes,
Oh, yeah, there we go. Say hello in many different media.
Right. This, sorry, I'm just typing, is what Barry's talking about.
I got no clue what we're talking about.
Esquire's font choice.
Oh,
That
for God's
is
sake.
what they're using for the front page cover headlines and like pull quotes and headlines inside the magazine. And
Madness.
I do not know what the hell is going on with the world.
No, because it's a really tasteful sort of serif font. It's not any of the really cliched ones. It's a bit Garamondi, but yeah, and then...
It's just massively jarring.
Yeah, it really looks wrong. It looks like a kid's menu.
Has Barry applied the sharpen tool, says Paul Riley. No, Paul, I have changed my camera.
Oh, that's true, yes. And is that a new picture? Oh, no, it's not a new picture. It's a cloth on the board, isn't it?
Yeah.
I thought it was a lovely kind of floral...
Yeah, I have no idea why the MacBook Pro camera goes fuzzy. It's not the camera itself, but something is clearly going wrong with the camera or the...
Well, mine's fine.
But I'm on a
MacBook Air.
Exactly.
I'm on a MacBook Air, and mine's, yeah.
I've never understood... I don't understand it, but...
Are you
It
all
does
ready
seem
for
to work.
M4s next week?
Yeah,
Do you
I'm
wanna
trying
make-
to.
do
I'm
you
trying to
wanna
look
make that
away.
a nib, Darian?
Hmm?
Do you want to make
Sorry?
that a little extra nib we can drop in about likelihood of M4 Apple products coming
Not
next
launched
week?
them yet.
We
We
do it when
they
we
launch
tend
them.
to hold off
We'll
until
go big
things
next week.
materialise. Yeah, I've
Bar
submitted
humbug.
rumours and predictions before, and they never make the cut.
Oh, they're definitely going to launch something in for
There's definitely stuff coming.
that Mac Mini for starters. That's
Yeah.
more tempting than the Pro, to be honest.
I still get an educational
Look into
discount
my
because I was
eyes.
doing evening classes a couple of months ago, so I can get my 80 quid off the new Mac Mini or whatever. So that's quite a good, nice little life hack. Just do evening classes and be a student forever.
Does that count? Because I thought
Yeah.
you needed an AC email address to
You do
qualify for that.
if you sign up to do like adult learning at an accredited college, they'll give you an email address for the duration of your
Really?
course. Yeah.
I've got teachers in the house, so I don't need to worry of all that nonsense. But although another tip, if you are trying to buy, I bought for my business using the partner's discount, and that caused a whole world of pain.
Oh, yeah, I
Just-
can
It was just
imagine.
not even worth the discount. So
No, the
don't do
discounts
that.
aren't. They're not that generous. The Apple ones. I
No,
mean, they're worth
10%.
having, but yeah.
You can get 10% business discount from any store as well, or 5 or 10%.
Can
If
you?
just yeah.
Oh,
well, just yeah. But is that like your business, like buying nine flavors of every Mac
No,
that
go,
comes
go, and
out?
talk,
Or...
go and talk to the business advisor at the Apple store
Right. But is that
and show them you've got a VAT number and grown-upness,
okay?
and they'll give you a business
give
discount.
you a biscuit.
Give you a biscuit, yes.
I might try that next time.
50 seconds. Tension is mounting. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, Cole. It's unseasonably sunny, and because now we're kind of into the autumn, the sun is a bit lower in the sky and is shining directly in through the window onto my camera. But it's either that or just gloom.
Sure, it's not the reflection off your head.
It's
Oh.
both. It's all things.
We started early. It's only a minute to go.
I know, sufficiently short that we couldn't have a proper slagging match. You see,
Can at least give my.
you know, Darren, it was meant in a very loving and caring way.
Of course, yes. I take no offence. I barely listen.
Nobody else does, so I don't know why you should.
Paul Riley suggests a 30% grey window tint. I don't actually have a slider control on my window. You know, it's like it's analog, unfortunately.
Well, you can get this digital glass stuff that you can control.
Yeah, but the sash windows in this 19th. Oh shit!
Hey,
1 o'clock. Missed
language.
it. 1 o'clock.
Hello, and welcome to the PC Pro podcast. It is Thursday, the 24th of October, 2024, and we're back live in actual person. Well, we were live in person before. We actually did a live show that's been broadcast delayed for the past 2 weeks, but now we're here live in person. And look, we've got a new member with us today who's never appeared on a PC Pro podcast before. So Lee Grant is now busily scratching new rows into his spreadsheet. So it's a welcome to Olivia Whitcroft.
Hi.
Yay!
For those who don't read the magazine, Olivia, and why the hell don't you if you don't, but Olivia is one of our real world columnists, very much in the Roach Nahuma legal bracket. How are you, Olivia?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, very excited to be here today.
Well, that makes you the only person to be excited to be here, but coming all the way from Madrid is John Honeyball,
Afternoon.
and all the way from sunny North London, Darian Graham-Smith.
That's right. Hello, everyone.
Hello. So let's crack on because there's an awful lot to get through. And we're starting, surprise, surprise, with AI. And this is an announcement that came this week from Claude, who, from Anthropic, sorry, who push out the Claude AI system. And they've introduced a new part of their AI system available via their API, in which you can use the AI to directly control your computer. So you can say to the AI, I don't know, find me the best restaurant in London to go to dinner tonight, and it will open the web browser, it will search for best restaurants in London in Google, typing that in as you sit there, search the information, and then pass it back to you. I mean, that's a really bad example of things it can do, but you can see how this might be used to apply a Gaussian filter in Photoshop, or cut a section of video in Premiere. I'm not sure it works specifically with what specific apps it works with at the moment. This is very much a beta in training, but what we are seeing is AI that is capable of basically taking over your computer, doing stuff in front of you, and basically getting you out of the way. And this obviously raises, I mean, this is both, I think, both incredibly exciting and faintly terrifying, in the sense that it's great that if you don't know how to use a particular part of an application, for example, you can just say to the AI, go and do this. Or some of the examples that they've put out on various videos this week showing things like real drudge work that people do in their day-to-day jobs, like having to mail merge or fill out supplier forms, that the AI can do automatically by searching for data on your PC. By the way, it does that recall thing of screenshotting what's on your PC and passing the data that way, for those who like a security klaxon. But obviously, the other implication of this is the AI is taking control of your computer, and that could have some pretty serious implications if things go wrong, because let's say the AI does something illegal. Let's say it turns your computer into a botnet, or downloads some images that it shouldn't be downloading, then that becomes a question of liability. Now, to be clear, Claude have made it very clear in their terms and conditions and in the warnings to people using this stuff that they should only use it in a virtual machine. This is a developer preview. Try not to expose it to any live system. But this is inevitably the direction of travel we're heading in. Darian, what do you make of it?
Well, I was just thinking, this sounds like it might lead to an entire generation of middle-aged people never needing again to have any contact with their parents, because it's exactly that kind of, I know what I want to achieve, but I don't know the steps I need to take to make it. I don't know how to work this interface to get to the destination I'm looking for. I don't know where that feature I was using the other day has gone to. And I think, I'm joking a little bit, but actually that's incredibly powerful, because, computer interfaces, with the best will in the world, there are so many complex depths and modalities that you have to interact with, and they change. I mean, I'm as I get older, I'm getting a lot more sympathetic to people who said, I didn't want Windows 98, I was perfectly happy with 95, didn't want XP, they've moved everything around, didn't want 7, they've changed this and that. I mean, it's a lot to carry in your brain, the cognitive load of keeping up with all the changes. So if you can harness an AI to kind of cut through the how and get to the what, then, I mean, this is, to be fair to me, exactly what I've been saying that I hoped Windows 12 would include. I've been saying that, if Microsoft is investing in AI, as it clearly is, I think it needs to forget about silly kind of tricks and the inevitable summarize your thing or generate text to do this, and be much more productive and practical. Look at the way you use your computer, learn the things that you want to do, learn the systems that you use, and anticipate and help you to actually, as I say, be productive.
John?
I had terrible connectivity on my plane this morning. I must have words with the pilot. So I was trying to read up on this. Isn't it talking to APIs in your system rather than just sort of screen scraping applications and trying to poke at menus? I think
no, that's exactly. You interact via the Claude API, but it is exactly taking over mouse control and clicking on things.
Okay, because that to me sounds like a pretty dodgy way of doing things, simply because people move things around. I mean, how are you going to be squirting virtual keystrokes at menus and so forth? And when people redesign the menu, does it come to a crashing halt? The problem with going via the UI is traditionally that hasn't worked very well. You need a better way, a more robust way of exposing these things. I think obviously there's the standard joke that's going to apply of, I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that, or I'm really sorry, Dave, I did that, which is going to apply here. And I think Darian's point is valid about what's going to happen here in terms, or was it you, Barry, about, it starts sending out emails on your behalf. saying rubbish, or deciding to react to an incoming email and deciding that mail bombing Microsoft is a good idea because you didn't like their latest bit of Office email or whatever. Control of this thing is obviously going to be hugely important, and simply running it in a VM ain't going to be enough. That's just trying to contain the damage. So I think we need a much better idea of what's going on here. Actually, just as a little side thought, how many of you have actually used, over the last decade or more, have used Automator on a Mac?
Yes.
Which is really, really powerful because it exposes a set of functionality out of applications rather than menus and screen scraping, and allows you to build these workflows and then do things with them. You can create little applets that go off and do things. The one that's a particular favourite of mine is you can attach pieces of automation to a folder. So when a file is dropped into it, it automatically runs on that file. And I use that all the time for converting file formats. You just drop something into a format and it sprays out all the various differences. So that would actually be quite an interesting thing for Apple to do if they're going to expand the capabilities of Automator with an AI front end to actually help you build these workflows and learn. And where the AI bit I think would be really useful would be learning what you're doing, learning your workflows, learning the repetitive. And then that suddenly, for those of us that have to spend our miserable lives inside horrible tools like Excel, it would be really useful for it to be able to watch what you're doing and make really useful suggestions about, you seem to be doing this a lot, shall I build you a little tool to do this?
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff would be genuinely useful, and also genuinely self-contained. So I think that's pretty interesting. But and as Jeff and Running Dak have said, of course, we've got PowerShell on Windows. And so being able to talk into PowerShell APIs, to me, is much more powerful on the Windows platform than attempting to poke keystrokes and mouse clicks.
On the legal side of this, about who takes responsibility if the AI goes rogue, I'll come to you shortly, Olivia, but I was speaking to Alistair Kalman, who's a regular amongst the podcast audience here, a retired barrister, but dealt a lot with cybersecurity law. And I was talking to him last night about this, and I was saying, to him, who would bear responsibility if the AI did something illegal on your system? And he pointed to some recent court cases in both the UK and the US where basically consumers have been caught by these what they call click wrap agreements, where we've all seen those 90-page terms and conditions that you basically click through every time you agree to use a piece of software, and how these are being challenged successfully in a couple of cases in the States where companies try and deny all kinds of responsibility in their EULAs, and they're finding that when it comes to court, consumers are winning these cases. So Alistair's basic conclusion, without trying to paraphrase him too much, is that if companies try and hide behind these EULAs to say, this is all down to you, we're passing off responsibility, that's unlikely to stand. What do you think on that, Olivia?
Yeah, it's an interesting, and I was thinking with the EU AI Act now, which distinguishes between a provider and a deployer, and both have responsibilities. So the party that develops and writes and trains the AI has responsibilities, as does the party that's deploying it. So it's an interesting question. If something goes wrong with the party deploying it, do they have sole responsibility? Because as you said, it's acting on their behalf when it sends out the emails or as it does it, or whether the provider hasn't done an appropriate risk assessment and hasn't done appropriate things in its development of it. So yeah, the contractual element too, as you say, the contract between the provider and the deployer may have an impact on that, but lots of things to consider there.
Wouldn't ultimately, Olivia, or at least initially, the company that did the deed, I mean, the company in which this happened, wouldn't they be vicariously liable on behalf of the tools that they deployed?
Well, they might be directly liable, not necessarily just vicariously liable, if they're the ones that have actually done the unlawful thing or the thing that gives rise to liability. But I'm thinking in the background there, if they've done all they can to do due diligence on this AI and it still goes wrong, does the person who actually developed, trained the AI have some responsibility as well?
So it sounds like...
Sorry, Darren, I'll come back to you in 2 seconds. There's just a point I want to make on the back of that I mean, 20 years ago, and this was a point Alistair and I were discussing last night, where there was the case of Operation All, where people had their credit card details stolen. They were put into sites where you could buy child abuse images, and people were wrongly prosecuted on the back of having their credit card details stolen. So, yes, you know, it may well be that the company is liable, but that also relies on the police being able to determine in the first place that that, you know, who was at fault. And if you've got AI systems effectively controlling your PC on and off, then that suddenly becomes a much harder thing.
Well, it's difficult with AI in a lot of legal concepts because an AI doesn't have a separate legal personality at the moment. There's a human behind it somewhere, so it's determining which human is responsible for that AI. We've got the same with AIs creating things with intellectual property law. Who is the author? Who is the creator? Because it's an AI, they're not a legal personality. So, yeah, interesting things to come on that.
I was talking to a tech director recently of a fairly large UK organisation, and said, you know, what are your plans for even rolling out things like Microsoft's AI capabilities in Office 365? And their response was basically under no circumstances. And the reason was that they felt, or their legal team felt, that as things currently stood in its somewhat vague legal framework, you could argue, was that ultimately this person as tech director could ultimately be liable because they are the one who ultimately signed it off as head of the IT chain at board level. And that was a responsibility that at present they certainly were not prepared to take until it was a pretty much, you know, they wanted to be third, fourth generation deployment here rather than on the cutting edge.
Darren,
this is what I would.
Directors' liabilities as well as corporate liabilities. Okay.
Yeah, this is what I was going to say. It sounds like there's an enormous number of nuanced questions which will probably need to be answered in each individual case. There's not going to be any nice, simple black and white rule as to this person is responsible for this. And, you know, companies and public entities hate that sort of ambiguity, I would have thought. They want reassurance. They want to have a proper understanding of what their exposure is going to be. And that's obviously going to be a big problem in the coming years.
just before we leave AI for this week, there was also a really interesting demo by Runway this week, where they're introducing something called Act One, which is basically a way of turning human actors into animations, real sort of Pixar-like animated characters, but not just animated characters, you know, so morphing somebody's look into somebody else so that you might get a voice actor to play a certain role, and they can be morphed into an entirely different character for a scene in a movie. It's something that's incredibly hard to explain on a podcast, but it's not just converting their voice, it's converting their facial expressions, which is the key here, I guess. So
is it a bit like what they did with Gollum in Lord of the Rings, only now done entirely digitally?
Exactly that. So it's sort of mapping the facial expressions, and in other words, it's still maintaining the essence of the performance, the actor, but morphing it into a different character, a different look, maybe an animated character with a different voice. Anyway, I'll pop the link into Discord for those who join us live every week, and we're here every Thursday at 1 p.m. at pcpro.link/Discord. And if you get 5 minutes, you can have a look at that for yourselves. Anything to say on that, anybody, before we shuffle along? Okay, let's go to the next story then, Darren, and we're back to this idea of banning smartphones.
Well, sort of. I mean, it's a little bit less broad than that, I'm pleased to say. This is a private members bill introduced by Josh McAllister, who's the Labour MP for Whitehaven and Workington. And he's referring to it as the Safer Phones Bill. It's actually called the Protection of Children (brackets Digital Safety and Data Protection Bill. So I can sort of see why he's come up with a snappier nickname for it. It's got a couple couple of parts, but the one you're referring to is it proposes to legally, statutorily ban kids from having smartphones in schools, specifically from using them during the school day. I'm not sure if they're allowed to carry them under the proposal, but not use them, or whether they have to be completely locked away. But the thing about this is it has attracted some attention, but already, according to research from Policy Exchange, 99% of secondary schools are already enforcing this without needing a law. So it does feel a little bit like, we must do something-ism. And it's not universally agreed that it's necessarily a good thing. So there's a pressure group called Smartphone Free Childhood who is urging that no kids should have access to phones until they're at least 13. But others, there's a gentleman called Pete Etchells, who's professor at Bath Spa University, says that it's a bit of an easy but unproven assumption that if you take technology away from kids, they will do more beneficial or healthier things instead. There was a law passed in 2011 in South Korea, which banned kids from playing online games at night, and it was repealed in 2021 because it was deemed to have done absolutely no good to anybody. So yeah, it's well, I don't want to accuse Mr. McAllister of tokenism. I'm sure the idea is well intended, but it's not the not the enormous change that some headlines have made it out to be. There is another part to it as well, but do you want to talk about the smartphones first?
Well, yeah. What do you make of that, Olivia? The idea of banning smartphones in schools?
Yeah. So I think part of it is giving the teachers, the school, the headmasters, the headmistresses, the legal justification to take away smartphones so that they're not legally responsible, for example, if the smartphone gets damaged or lost in their possession, or if they have to carry out searches, for example. And it's part of much wider issues to do with safety in schools and to do with privacy and all sorts of issues in schools. But if at the moment it's just guidance to not give children smartphones and not allow them to have smartphones, if it's made a law, they can be more confident in their decision and not get in trouble with parents, with children for having confiscated them. So I think that's part of it, is the worries about schools that if we do implement this policy or this guidance, we're going to get in trouble if the smartphone's damaged and we confiscate it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the counter, Darren's already made it really, is that 99% of schools don't allow them to be used in the classroom anyway. And, I find it extraordinary if a school did. But the as a parent, I send my daughter to school. My eldest daughter had to travel, 3 or 4 miles in a bus to school. And it certainly is handy. For example, the little one this week had to stay late to go and play for the netball team, to have that contact, to be able to say, can you come and pick me up and whatever. So I'm struggling to understand the motivation for it, because
I don't think we have the actual text of the bill yet, do we?
Yeah.
I think it's just somehow it's got through a first reading without any text. But,
it's not going to be debated until the 7th of March. Sorry, so we've got plenty of time to kick over this.
I don't think it's necessarily saying they can never have a phone for emergency situations. It's about not using it during the school day to get distracted. I think someone's saying on the chat there may be a stigma of others having and you not having one. That was what I understood from what I read, but rather than complete ban on ever having a phone if you're under a particular age.
Yeah, Ian, sorry, John, I'll come back to you in a sec. Ian Clark also makes a good point that mobile phones these days are increasingly used for apps to travel on public transport as well. So that's another issue they're going to have to come over if they do effectively ban phones actually even going into schools. Go on, John, sorry.
I think there's a number of points here. Unfortunately, they all get conflated under the entirely worthy title of looking after the child, which of course is a very broad topic, one of which is use of schools within school hours at school. And I can see, lots of potential here for, lock boxes that the child has to put the phone into. And, you can have and therefore you remove the liability bit from that, or most of the liability from that point of view, if the teacher isn't handling the device, or the teaching assistant. And of course, if you then find a child in school hours at school with a phone, then there's the sort of disciplinary side that can kick in at that point. I think the 2 points I'd want to make here, one of which is that one of which is quite legitimate parental wish to remain in communication with the child, and that the child can stay in communication with the parent during the day, saying, I'm not feeling very well, or something like this, that they feel that there is some element of communication there. There's the payment side that you've just said, maybe paying for bus tickets or bus passes or electronic payments or whatever. And in that realm, surely a great solution is a smartwatch. You can set these up and run them without having a tethered phone, and you can load up the necessary apps on it that you want them to have, including payments. And I don't know whether this is a workable solution, but I do know that a parent can set one of these up for a child without it having an attached phone to it. And then that might be an interesting solution in this space. I don't know if it would work, but certainly it claims to be valid. The other one, of course, is what happens out of hours. It's one thing to ban children being particularly unpleasant to each other during the day because they don't have their smartphone and they're not on WhatsApp. But what are they going to do in evenings? What are they going to do at weekends when they're outside of the school environment? And I'm not sure that a phone ban per se within school actually removes that other quite separated area of concern.
Yeah, I don't think this legislation really aims to. I don't think this part of this legislation aims to address that second concern. I will just say on the smartwatches thing, I think we looked about a year ago at a kid-focused smartwatch, which was supposed to do many of the things you mentioned, included a GPS tracker. But the truth is, I had a very, very simple, basic digital watch when I was at school in like 1983, and I found even that was absolutely sufficient to completely distract me from the lessons. So I fear any sort of technology kids are going to find a way to focus on that rather than on Emil and the detectives or whatever they're supposed to be looking at.
Emil and the detectives. Oh well, just showing your age there, my friends. They've moved on a bit since then, I think. But yeah, lots of interesting comments again on Discord. Michael D was saying his kids have a no phones policy, but they were being asked by teachers to use them in class. I've definitely had experience of that, where they've been asked to use their phones in school. In fact, my youngest daughter, again, who's doing photography, was using her phone to take photos this week. So there are legitimate uses for them in schools. Increasingly, schools' homework is also done via apps, which my youngest completes on her mobile phone off more than not, because they're just multiple choice questions. So there's a lot of issues being raised here if they do go down this path, but maybe we should come back to it if and when this legislation it's a private member's bill, isn't it, Darren? So chances are it's not going anywhere anyway. But
well, no, but I think the idea of raising it is to kind of provoke debate and hopefully, resurrect some of the issues that maybe what was it, the Online Safety Act, was it last year, did not fully settle all of these questions.
Yeah, we thought the Online Safety Act was probably going a bit too far, and Labour's now hold my beer. We've got some more back here, but anyway, let's not get dragged down that wormhole. Let's get dragged down another one instead, and this is go on, Darren.
Don't forget there was a second half of this legislation, but I will just run through it very quickly because I can tell you're eager to talk about WordPress. There were actually 4 parts, but 2 of them were just sort of, committing to increasing child safety, etc. The other one was to legally prevent social media companies from making use of young people's data until they turn 16. Currently, I believe the age is 13. I don't know if it's statutory or if that's just guidance, but he wants to see it raised to 16.
Can we have it raised to 65, please?
Well, it's a bit of a misunderstanding here. I think what it's actually doing is saying that you need parental consent to access the services, and at the moment, under UK GDPR, it's set at 13 years old, and you don't need parental consent, and they're thinking of raising it to 16, which brings it in line with some other EU member states that already have it at 16. So I think that's the issue there.
Cool.
This is what happens when we get lawyers on the show. They actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's a bit worrying. Can we stop this, please?
I mean, I did just want to comment on that because I think there's a lot of focus on this issue of consent, whereas actually children's access to online services, social media and other online services isn't just to do with whether or not you've got parental consent. There's much wider issues to do with child protection, because they are vulnerable, to do with data minimization, fairness, security and so on. So it's just one of a multitude of issues of protecting children online. I think it's a small part of a multitude of issues, what age you need your parental consent, and there are wider issues to face. So that's my early thoughts on that.
Okay, thanks, Olivia. So, as previously trailed, WordPress. This has been rumbling on for about a month now, and I guess it's finally time we woke up to it. But this is a row that was started by Matt Mullenweg, who both owns or is the CEO of Automatic, which is the company that hosts WordPress.com, or owns WordPress.com. And Mullenweg himself is also the guy who owns the open source, or owns is the wrong word, but is behind the open source WordPress project. So WordPress, I'm sure as most listeners know, is the open source CMS for the majority of the world's websites. It's well over 50%, I believe. So there's the WordPress open source software that anyone can install on any server and run their own installation. You can have it hosted on WordPress.com as a paid-for service, or you can go to an alternate host, of which there are thousands. And one of those is a company called WP Engine, who offer WordPress hosting. They're not actually affiliated with Automatic or WordPress itself as such. And Mullenweg sort of laid into them about a month ago in a blog. He called them a cancer on WordPress, didn't mince his words, and was basically saying that he basically accused WordPress Engine of not really contributing to the open source project in any meaningful sense. He said, to summarize, they do about $500 million in revenue on top of WordPress and contribute back 40 hours a week, whereas Automatic is a similar size and contributes back 3,915 hours a week. So he was claiming they're basically getting a free ride on the open source software. He also had a go at them for basically disabling features that are built into the WordPress software. So one of the nice things about the WordPress CMS is that every revision is stacked, so that if I go and edit an article and screw it up, I can jump back to the version I saved an hour ago and revert to that state. And WP Engine doesn't allow that, apparently. They turn that off. They say because people don't need it. He says because they're too tight to pay for the data storage, basically. Anyway, this has turned into an almighty row that's dragging in all kinds of people from the open source world who are some agreeing with Mullenweg, saying that WP Engine is misbehaving. Others saying that this is the nature of open source software. If you put something out there as open source, you can't demand that you have you have to commit a certain amount of time or developer work into the project. That's not the rules of the game, and that Mullenweg, who has basically cut off WP Engine's access to certain libraries and stuff they need to run their service normally, he's acting like he owns a place, basically, which isn't the way with open source software. Of course, this has now ended up in court, and there's a whole kerfuffle going on. But one last thing before I let everybody else in is that this blew up into such an issue that Mullenweg, it was causing some disgruntlement within Automatic's own staff. And so on 2 occasions in the past month, he has offered any employee the chance to resign with 9 months pay and allowed to keep all of their own equipment and stuff that they're provided. Most of Automatic staff work from home. And he's basically said, take it or leave it. And nearly 10% of staff took it on the first offer, and they've repeated the offer since last week. And we've not seen figures yet. But it's an extraordinary thing for a CEO to do, to sort of say, look, this is my position. If you don't like it, sod off, and here's your check. But anyway, what are the crap? Well, maybe let's start with you, Olivia, in terms of, I mean, that kind of take it or leave it approach. What do you make of that?
When I was looking at this, is it just purely the open source and issue and using the software, or is there a trademark issue in this as well?
There is. So he's also arguing that WordPress, because they use the phrase WP in their name, they're basically trying to not
So
pass.
is he just trying to come at any angle he can at the moment?
Yeah, I think it started as sort of they're just cheating. You know, they're abusing our thing, and not giving back, and now it's sort of expanded out to a multifaceted attack, if you like.
Yes, I mean, ultimately, I mean, with whether the source is open source or not, it's ultimately down to the terms in which you want to license your software, and you're making open source, so the owner of the software has a right to use whatever license they need, and not all open source licenses are the same. So from that aspect, if they're saying, well, we're withdrawing the license, provided that's not a breach of the terms of the license, then legally he's permitted to do it. If he's granted a license and not allowed to revoke it, then there's an issue there. What I thought was interesting with the trademark side of it as well, though, is trademarks meant to be a badge of origin. So on what basis are they saying that the WP Engine's misusing the trademark? Does anyone think that WP Engine is part of WordPress or is part of it? Is there some confusion there?
Well, he was making the argument that his own mother thought WP Engine was part of WordPress or part of Automatic.
Biased.
Yeah, I'll say you probably not the best.
Is it just the name, or is there the logo issues or stylizations?
I don't think there's logo, but certainly, you know, the use of WP, I would, to be honest, even as a, you know, vaguely interested party, I wasn't entirely clear on that. But yes, I think it's, as you say, he sort of started with one attack and then broadened it out to attack them on various fronts. But go on, John.
Can I say that WP, in my mind, means word processor or word perfect or any of the other uses of WP that we've had over the last 30 years? And anyone trying to, as William Kirk agrees, WP used to be word perfect. I totally agree. And I'm afraid to say I don't know the exact terms of his open sourcing of the original code, and therefore whether this other outfit is in violation or not. I probably would suspect that they're not, and he's just having a monumental throwing of his toys out of the pram. Unfortunately,
there's some sort of ethical saying you should be contributing more.
Well, I'm sorry, tough. Absolutely tough. If that's not the terms on which you've done it, then tough. And if you have been, let's call a spade here. This guy has come up with some very good stuff. Let's not be in any confusion about this. WordPress is a very popular platform for very good reasons. Yeah, and it's had some rocky times, and some of the plugins that have been available for them have been horrible security holes in the past. Often due to nothing to do with WordPress itself, but due to third-party companies, web design houses and so forth, who haven't updated their customers' websites that they're charging for hosting and designing for. And so they can turn into horrible security mess. And, you know, I have seen this myself. But he has been, incredibly successful with this tool, and that's great. And so have other people, and that's great too. That surely is the nature of open source and why it went that way. If he didn't want it like that, revoke the license, issue it again, turn yourself and call yourself Bill Gates. I don't care.
Is it that says what he's doing? Is he's saying I'm revoking my license? It sounded like what Barry said.
I don't think he's doing that, but he's using different means to attack.
I've just been looking it up. WordPress is licensed under GPL v2, and my my very unschooled understanding is that you can't retroactively revoke access to source code that you've received legally under GPL v2. And also, I mean, GPL v2 is a very well understood license. It's been around for decades. There must be masses of case law. There must be plenty of things that never made it to court because a sensible lawyer looked through and said, you can do this, you can't do this. So, I mean, I'm obviously very ignorant of the specifics, but it seems like this ought to be a black and white case.
And if it's this big a deal to him, start with a clean sheet of paper, do a WordPress 2025 as an entirely new, clean platform with no code carry across, etc., etc., and come up with something that's even better. Because I'm sure there's ways and means in which WordPress could be significantly improved, and maybe even a ground-up redesign would be a good idea. I don't know the internals of it, but you look at some of the horrors out there that have been lurking around for years, gradually getting more and more cruft on it. These are all the well-known software from all the well-known vendors, because it's actually much more easier and convenient for them to bolt things on and twiddle things around and slap on a little bit more of makeup and a wig than to actually come up with something new and ground up and totally re-engineered from fresh.
Okay, well, I'm glad we've sorted that one out. So let's shuffle along to Wi-Fi 7 and some interesting limitations on implementations of it, Darren.
Yeah, so this is a story that John found. I don't know what you were looking for when you came across a site called WCCF Tech, which I've never encountered myself. But they have run a story complaining that the iPhone 16 and iPhone 16 Pro are not as fast as advertised. Specifically, saying that the Wi-Fi 7 performance is not a groundbreaking or indeed even measurable improvement over the Wi-Fi 6 and 6E that we've had on previous iPhone generations. Now, being someone who has tested a lot of Wi-Fi myself and also a little bit of a cynic, I have to say, what did you bleed and expect? This is absolutely standard across pretty much every Wi-Fi 7 thing I've tried, that although it does have some benefits, it is no faster, cateris paribus, than a good Wi-Fi 6E connection to a single device from a single router. That said, of course, there is the potential for future implementations of MLO, future uses of the 320 megahertz channel width to improve things, but you shouldn't be surprised right now. And I was kind of inclined to just kind of snort at it and move on. But there is perhaps something to this, because one of the things they specifically point to is the fact that the new iPhones, they advertise Wi-Fi 7. Apple has very clearly stated, with no caveats, these phones use Wi-Fi 7 802.11be with 2x2 MIMO, but they do not support the 320 megahertz channel width. They are, as WCCF Tech rather quaintly puts it, capped at 160 megahertz. I'm not sure if they think that's a measure of bandwidth in terms of bytes per second or what. But anyway, it is true that one of the key features of Wi-Fi 7 is the 320 megahertz width. And the Wi-Fi Certified 7 program, which is incredibly annoying, that really should be called Wi-Fi 7 Certified, but for some reason it's Wi-Fi Certified 7, does require devices to support the 320 megahertz channel width in order to have the sticker. But it is permitted to produce devices which implement the current version of Wi-Fi 7, the current state, or some parts of it, and call them Wi-Fi 7 without having the sticker. And it is true that the final ratification of Wi-Fi 7 still hasn't happened, even though we've reviewed about 8 Wi-Fi 7 routers already. So although I think it was a little bit naive for anyone to really expect that you'd get 10 gigabits a second down the line to your iPhone 16, it is fair to say, I mean, it's always been fair to say you don't get the speeds that they're advertised from a Wi-Fi router, and that is a little bit of a scandal. And if Apple is saying it's Wi-Fi 7, and then if you actually check it, sniff the packets or inspect the connection, I should say, it's only half as wide. That is not great from a consumer point of view.
Go on, John.
I've got mixed views on this. My big anger is with the Wi-Fi 7 community out there, because Wi-Fi 7 and the Wi-Fi, the 802.11 specifications for Wi-Fi have been subjected to the same sort of nonsense that we've had with USB, where let's rename it, let's change its numbering, let's change the numbers around and so forth. Because with Wi-Fi 7, the 6 gigahertz band is not actually a mandatory part of Wi-Fi 7 specification. There's a lot of products coming out, either shipping now or coming to market, that are 2.4 and 5 gigahertz only, but they implement the Wi-Fi 7 encoding. Now, does that make them a Wi-Fi 7 device? In my eyes, well, kind of maybe, but not really, because they don't do the 6 gigahertz. Now, if you're then going to say they're going to do 6 gigahertz, should they be doing 320 megahertz channel width on 6 gig and 240 megahertz channel width on 5 gigahertz? Well, here's the interesting problem, of course, because in UK and Europe, there is only one 320 megahertz channel on 6 gigahertz. There's 3 in the United States. Now, I think Apple's position on this is actually quite reasonable, which is that A, there's almost no decent 320 megahertz width 6 gig out there in terms of infrastructure, in terms of routers and Wi-Fi meshes and so forth. Yes, it's appearing, but it's still early days on that front. Secondly, you could see a case whereby going to that higher speed, that higher bandwidth, is going to have higher power consumption. And for what? What's the benefit to the user here? Especially if you think that, as Darian has quite correctly said, Wi-Fi 6, either on 5 gigahertz or 6 gigahertz, with the current maximum width of 160, can quite easily do 1.8, 1.9 gigabits a second of user data. So 900 megabytes a second of user data. So what's the benefit in going faster here at this moment in time? Now, my closing point here is where I think Apple is probably being appropriately cautious, which is exactly what they've done on this kind of technology in the past. And they did it with AX and 6E, is to say there's no benefit in doing 320 at the moment on 6 gigahertz, but this is all what's called SDR, software defined radio. It's entirely possible that they can switch this capability on down the line on a firmware upgrade, where there is a real use case and a real benefit to the user to be doing this, but not this week. But my annoyance here is, and I totally agree with Darian here, is that it really is about time that the industry came up with a code of practice of defining what this Wi-Fi 7 thing is, what channel widths it will do, and even which damn frequency bands it will do. Because I had the shock of my life. I think I was with Tim, or maybe I was with you, Barry, and we visited the Netgear stand at CES in January and discovered Wi-Fi 7 routers coming to market with no 6 gigahertz on it. And it was like, sorry, has someone left something out of this? Because we all expected Wi-Fi 7 to mean tri-band, and it doesn't. And the industry really needs to get its act together here.
I was going to say I'm less sympathetic to Apple than you are. I think if you're going to advertise Wi-Fi 7, you should ship what is generally understood to be Wi-Fi 7. But then,
but what is that? How many devices out there?
Well, you've won me over a little. That's what I'm saying. You've won me over a little bit by pointing out the absurdity of a situation where certain features are not mandatory in Wi-Fi 7, but if you don't have them, you can't have the Wi-Fi 7 certification. Like, what does mandatory mean? What does certification mean? They need to be the same thing.
Like I've got the Wi-Fi 7, the UDM Pro 7s, the high-end Unify Wi-Fi 7 bases at home and in the lab, and they're fabulous. And they will do 320 on 6, and they'll do 240 on 5 gigahertz, and they are faster than something off a shovel, and that's great. But you look for MLO, and it's not there, and you go searching for it, and then they say, oh, MLO, it's in this menu, but only if you're on this version of the firmware, which isn't out now.
Olivia, have you got any views on this? I've lost the will to live already.
I think, yeah, more the latter. Do I?
Go on, Darren, finish us off.
I was going to say, actually, several weeks ago, maybe 6 or 7 now, we looked at the Orbi 770, the Netgear mesh, that was the first one to come with MLO. And I was saying, I was nominating it for hot hardware, but even I couldn't vote for it because I couldn't get MLO working. Happily, with a firmware update, a new laptop, and the latest Windows 11 24H2 update, MLO is now fully functioning, and you can look forward to my full review of that in not the issue of PC Pro that's going to drop in 10 days time, but the one after that. But I've got to say, there's a reason why manufacturers haven't been rushing to get MLO out the door and haven't been advertising it as you know, as enthusiastically and as breathlessly as I might have expected, because I've seen almost no benefit from it. I think it helps robustness, it helps the amount of bandwidth there is to go around, but it hasn't made any difference to headline speeds.
Just before we come off this topic, I'm going to read out what Michael Diaz put on Discord without any extra comment. I am upgrading my parents' Wi-Fi 6 AX this weekend. I have told them I think the Wi-Fi will outlive them and I won't be upgrading them again. Okay. So,
Threat?
yeah. That's... well, good luck, Mr. and Mrs. Dear. In the meantime, let's shuffle along to Nibs, and the first one's with you, Darian.
So it is. Let me just find it on my I had so many notes about Wi-Fi 7. I've lost it now. Oh, this is going back to licensing. Isn't that exciting? So Qualcomm, you know, has been riding quite high in the brand stakes lately. It's got some great chips powering smartphones. It's got new ARM-based processors powering the latest AI Windows laptops, and it's just lost its license to produce ARM CPUs. ARM has withdrawn its permission for Qualcomm to keep using its designs. Says they must stop within 60 days. This is all part of a legal squabble where Qualcomm originally acquired some licenses by acquiring a company that had them called Nuvia. ARM maintains that Qualcomm can't use them just because Nuvia had them. It says the license was not transferable in that way. Qualcomm, of course, would very much like to keep using the stuff without having to pay for a fresh license, but ARM doesn't want that. It doesn't mean there's no chance that smartphones or laptops are going to stop using Qualcomm chips. The worst case for Qualcomm is either that they have to buy new licenses or they have to re-engineer a load of stuff using the licenses they already have, not using the Nuvia stuff. One way or another, though, it's going to drag through the courts and be very acrimonious, and at the end of it, ARM and Qualcomm are going to say, we of course are best friends and look forward to working together for a long time to come. Was that in brief?
Very good indeed. I'm happy with that. The second nib this week is Vivaldi, my long-term favourite web browser. That's had a new facelift. It's now on version 7, and it's literally had a facelift in the sense that the UI has been completely redesigned, looks very clean, but perhaps the biggest new feature is something called dashboard. So this is the page you get, the start page when you create a new tab, and this can be used now to show your email inbox because it has a built-in email client, your calendar appointments because it has a built-in calendar, tasks, sticky notes. You can have feeds from different websites or even websites themselves hosted in little widgets on the page. And it's all very nice and lovely. Just another reason to go with Vivaldi and not one of the big giants, in my view. Although my view is not shared by the wider world. I think Vivaldi is still sub 1% worldwide market share. But if you've not checked it out in a while, I urge you to give it a go, because for PC Pro readers in particular who tend to like feature-stuffed software, it's pretty good.
Can I ask a question about Vivaldi?
Sure.
Does it rely upon funding from Google in the same way that Firefox does?
It's certainly, I think it takes some funding from Google, but not anywhere near 100%. In fact, you know, you can choose from a range of default search engines, and it actually defaults in its privacy to DuckDuckGo, which I think is where it gets a fair chunk of revenue from. So it's not as dependent as Firefox is now. Darian, final nib, please.
Yeah, so you'll remember the Raspberry Pi 5 came out a couple of months ago, and one of the most exciting things about it was the new PCIe Gen 2 bus, which was going to support the new M2 Hat Plus, which in turn was going to support NVMe SSDs. If you understood all of that, write in and you'll get a fiver. So now the Raspberry Pi Foundation, or Raspberry Pi Corporation, whatever they're calling themselves, is going to be selling their own SSDs, which are fully compatible with the M2 Hat Plus. They're in the M2 2230 format, which is convenient because it'll fit inside a Raspberry Pi 5 case, which a regular 2280 card wouldn't, of course. And they're very reasonably priced. You can buy the Hat and a 256 gigabyte SSD together for $30 US, or a 512 one for 55. A little bit cheaper if you don't need the Hat. Remember, it's not going to be as fast as the latest Whizzy SSDs because it is PCIe Gen 2, but still it's probably going to be quite a bit faster and nicer than your scrappy little micro SD cards that you were previously using.
Smashing. Okay, hot hardware time, and this week it's with me. It's not a keyboard. The audience will be shudderingly disappointed to hear. It is, in fact, this little thing I have in my hand, which you can see if you're watching us live on YouTube. A harmonica. See, I thought it was closer to a Swiss Army knife, but I can definitely see the harmonica. It's certainly more likely utility of a Swiss Army knife, in that this is basically a device that allows you to charge various devices irrespective of what connector you actually have. And he says struggling with the damn thing to get it open, but it has two different inputs. So there's the USB-A port, which is becoming increasingly rare. Darren, I saw you mithering about this on threads earlier. But we all know that, well, there's still a lot of USB-A plugs out there, but a lot of devices want to plug in with USB-C these days, obviously. So with this device, you can pull out the USB-A dongle, and then on this other side, open up the USB-C charger and pop it in that way. So it's a way to charge different devices. So it's got inputs for both USB-A and USB-C, but the USB-A dongle has also got a little adapter on the end of it, so that also turns into USB-C input. So you can input via USB-C or USB-A, and then you can output to either micro USB, the lightning port, which Apple is phasing out, but it's still on a hell of a lot of iPhones and iPads in the market, and output to USB-C as well.
Can I ask a question, Barry? Is this what? Am I getting confused about this thing because I can't see it very clearly on your camera? Is this what we used to call a promiscuous sex change device?
I don't know what you used to call it, John.
Well, no, it's plugs and sockets to plugs and sockets. It's a wiring interface adapter thing when you've got the wrong thing in one hand and the wrong thing in the other. Okay, but it hasn't got like a battery pack in it or something useful.
No, it hasn't. So it can be used for charging, and it supports is it the PD charging standard, so it can do reasonably high power, I think up to 30 watts input, if I recall.
That's not very good, actually.
Well, not for laptops. It's certainly for phones.
Yeah, phones and tablets and stuff would be okay, but laptops is a bit
it's
weak.
okay, but I mean, OnePluses will charge at like 90 watts now. So I mean, I know
that's pretty rare.
It. Well, yeah, but it's becoming less rare. If you're buying something in 2024, I don't know. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Please.
Max 25 watts. So
that's
even
worse.
Slightly worse than what you said.
It's not doing well so far, is it? Okay.
And data transfer.
Can you play it like this?
Can you play it? That's an interesting question. I've only had it 24 hours, but let me have a go. No, apparently no. No, it doesn't seem to bang out a note, which is disappointing.
Lip technique. That's what he needs.
The embouchure.
Embouchure, yes.
I used to play trumpet, mate. I know what an embouchure is, but you're going to get a note out of this thing.
We could so take this sideways, but we're not going to.
I'm going to say that the difficulty with this thing, and it's difficult if you can't actually see it, you're just listening on audio, but A, getting the things out is a little bit tricky, but B, the connections themselves are quite short. So it's probably about an inch, 2 inches of cable on the USB-A charger, for example, and then it's connected to this quite chunky unit. So if you've got a USB port that's sort of flush with your desk, as it is here on my MacBook, for example, it can be quite tricky to plug them in and then plug them into another device that's over here, because you've only got about 6 inches of room and they're not quite at the same angle, so it can be a little bit awkward to plug things in. It's not the most flexible devices ever. But that said, I was using it in my car earlier as a test. So you plug this into the car's USB port, then you've got a range of different ports for anyone in the car. So obviously I have USB-C, but my daughter's still got a Lightning old iPhone, so we could use it as a charger for her. So I could see it coming useful in situations like leaving it in the car or just dropping it into my laptop bag and using it on the road. But and it's not expensive. It's a £30 purchase online, so it's not an expensive device.
When you tried using it in the car, did you have to kind of dangle it from a socket and leave the phone hanging upside down precariously?
No, I mean it's sort of. I mean, it obviously depends on your car, but my car USB ports are down in the sort of bottom of the central console, if you like. So the phone was just.
But you couldn't
there.
use the phone while it was plugged in.
Yeah, you could. There's no reason why you couldn't. I mean,
Sorry, I
obviously,
thought you said it only had a 2-inch cable.
well, I mean, you can turn it. You obviously have to. You can't just lift the phone up in front of you, obviously, but it's just about flexible enough to just pick it up and see what was on the screen. But you're not going to be doing that while you're driving, Darren, I hope.
No, I'm more thinking of the passenger. You said it was your daughter's phone.
Well, no, but I mean, in terms of charging, it just adds that flexibility. I mean, maybe your daughter's not old enough yet, but God knows, every time on a car journey, I get asked, can I plug my phone in because I've run out of battery? Well, okay. So it will just help to solve situations.
I think she's the reason why Josh McAllister introduced the legislation.
Others.
2 points here. I like the idea of the sort of the pluggage Swiss Army knife kind of idea. That kind of appeals, as you say. Leave it in the center console of your car in case someone comes along with something that needs plugging in. I noticed from the specs sheet here on their website that you can actually do like one in and multiple out.
Yes.
So how does it work in terms of folding out multiple outputs?
Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't really highlight that because I think that would be tricky to be honest, because when
like a Swiss Army knife, it gets a bit, you end up cutting yourself if you bring out the screwdriver and the knife and the toothpick. The other question I've got here is, and maybe this is wrong on their website, but they say it's 875 grams, which is nearly a kilo in weight. That seems an awful lot to be hanging off a USB socket in your car.
It's not. I don't think it's nearly a kilogram. I've not weighed.
Well, that's what they say on their website in their dimensions.
It's surprisingly heavy. I'll give you that. I wouldn't.
So it could well be. It could be 800 grams then, which to me is worryingly heavy to plug in your car on a socket and then. I mean, certainly not hang your phone off the end of it as well. That would just be tempting fate. But still, that seems fairly substantial.
That must be the shipping weight, because there's no way.
I can't think it's nearly a kilogram in weight. I wouldn't have any worries about putting this into USB port and it being too heavy. It's not that heavy.
Yeah, no, so I appreciate it's not what they're saying. I'm just saying I think it must be a mistake because I'm visualizing 875 grams of anything. And
that's
that was my worry. I mean, I read it and thought that to me sounds like you're going to break sockets.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be worried about that. I promise you it's not that heavy. But anyway, having gloriously sold this thing, I'm looking forward to this vote. So, Darren, would you mind setting a poll running? Are you able to do that?
I can have a go, see if I can remember. It's been a little while.
Yes, so for those listening live on Discord, you'll be able to cast your votes.
How much is it?
It's 30 of your finest pounds, John.
Oh, okay. $29.99 actually, so there's a discounted rate. It's discounted.
Okay. So
tax included, so it's even less for businesses.
Okay. So let's start going around the room. Olivia, what do you think of this wonderful device?
So is it a yes or no answer?
It's a hot or not. Hot or not. You don't have to give us one word answer, but you've got to decide one way or t'other.
Not hot for me.
Fair enough.
Unless you can play it as a musical instrument too.
Give me a week of practice, Olivia, and come back to me next Thursday. If I can play God Save the Queen on it, we turn it into a hot. God Save the King. You're right, absolutely, John. Apologies, my lord. John.
Well, I kind of like the idea. I'm a bit worried about maybe some of its implementation because my initial idea was my initial thought was like, oh, that would be useful. I should have one of those in the armrest of my car. But then, as we've talked about earlier, we talked about Wi-Fi and ubiquitous standards, and I mentioned about USB-C. Almost everything now is USB-C in some form of plug, even if you end up with a trivial dribble of power into your device, you might get something come in. So from that point of view, I don't know. The weight bit is worrying me.
I promise you, it's not 850 grams. The next
Okay.
thing I'm going to do
Interesting.
is go into the kitchen and weigh this thing.
Why don't you run off and do that while I sit here whining about it? And
That
and
would
then we
take
could
too
actually
long.
inform our listeners correctly, couldn't we?
We could, but I haven't got time to get to the kitchen and back and find the
I'm sorry about
scales.
that. So from my point of view, no, sorry, 25 watts charging, not enough to be actually really useful in day-to-day operation. But then I'm thinking, how often am I going to want to have more than 25 watts using something other than USB-C?
Right.
And so I don't know. I'm going
Yeah.
to end up cold because there's too much I'm not really convinced about this compared to a little pouch of little cable male to female adapters and so forth. To me, that would actually, although you may end up losing
Yes.
one of them out the packet, but then you could lose all of this thing in one go. So I don't know. I'm saying no.
In defence of the power throughput, you got to remember, if you're using this in a car, for example, the amount of power you're getting from the charging socket itself is not anywhere near 25 watts in most cars. So I think that's a slight red herring, but I feel like I know where this is going. Darian?
Yeah, I think if you kind of pitched something like this 10 or 15 years ago, I might have been quite up for it because, we had, USB Type-C was just about appearing, lots of things using A, lots of things using micro, still some things using mini, still things using lightning and old 30-pin Apple connectors. It was a real problem, but nowadays I do feel it's largely solved, not entirely, but that's the direction we're going in, and it seems like a weird time, a weird point in history to be buying something which offers unified charging when I think that problem's is dying away for most of us. And as an emergency kind of thing, as just something, as John says, to keep in the car, I do sort of see the appeal. But then if I need to charge something up at a pinch in an emergency, that is when I really want more than 25 watts if I can possibly get it. So I'd be much more inclined to just stick a big battery pack in the glove compartment. All of which is a roundabout way of saying, I mean, also for 30 quid, you can buy a lot of cables. I'm sorry, I like the neatness of it. I can understand why a designer would get excited about this and why someone would fund it and put it through to retail, but it's not for me, sorry.
And I have to say that the absolute best comment about this has come from Skyloop on our Discord channel, who has said 875 grams is the equivalent of 17 and a half Mars bars, which I think just wraps it up in my mind.
How
I
many
have to say.
football pitches?
Right, but we have red button content on the PC Pro podcast, where as soon as the recording ends, we normally stay on for a couple of minutes to chat. In that time, I am going to go to my kitchen and find the flipping scales and measure this. If that's 875 grams, I will eat it, because it's definitely not 875 grams.
Or
Anyway,
you could eat 17 and a
No,
half
eat the
Mars bars. Yeah.
Eat the
Yeah.
equivalent of Mars
that's
bars. Yeah.
that's better. Although
I have insulin. It's fine. Let's go for it.
well, yeah, I think it has downsides. There's no doubt, but
What's the vote?
I think I like it as a concept. I think it's a useful little gadget you can stick in your laptop bag, or like I say, in the center console of the car, and stop my kids moaning at me for 10
The
minutes.
problem, Barry, is
Magic.
that we're old enough to remember when it would have been really damn useful.
Well, I'm sorry
And
I
I'm
wasn't
not
here of it.
sure that I'm not sure it is now.
Well, that's why you voted no, but I'm voting yes. But I am very much in the minority, both in the room and on Mixer, where the comments are so rapid. I've lost the poll. It's a defeat to the score to the tune of 20 votes to 5. So thank you as ever for your support, the great loyal PC Pro listenership. I shall reward you heavily next time we meet live. But that's the end of this week's show, and thank you very much in particular to Olivia for jumping in at short notice. Thank you to John for jumping in from Madrid. Thank you for Darren for keeping the whole bloody thing alive as usual. And we'll be back next week, and we'll see you then. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Right, stay there.
There was a reason why we started doing Post-amble, but I can't remember what it was now.
Is the Post-amble recorded and live, or is it just?
Yeah, so people can still see this on YouTube. They can still hear it. Our friends on Discord are still with us, but this will be cut off for the MP3, which, although we love our Discord friends, there are an awful lot more MP3 listeners out there. So,
So the people who download the podcast, Olivia,
Yeah.
won't get this.
yeah.
But it's just a nice little thing. And You know,
That was
you
quick.
think, oh, is he back?
What is that scale? Did you
Oh
get
my
that from a
goodness.
sweet shop in the 30s?
He can't talk now because he's got his in his mouth.
He is eating it. He's obviously found it.
Okay,
Right.
come on, reveal the
Live
weight.
weighs. Okay, and I'm going to take my fingers off the scales.
We can't read those numbers though. Is that like?
Sorry, what's
We can't read that.
I was expecting some proper, you know, calibrated
like
digital
120.
scales.
Just over 100 grams.
Ah, good guess.
Oh,
So it is definitely not 875 grams.
Well, in that case, but being unhelpful, John, do I now believe the rest of their claim specs for like their power
I
throughput?
wonder if
maybe you need 8 of them
875.
to get all the different
Yeah,
wires.
that can't
Yeah.
be the shipping weight. They cannot have 800, well, 700 grams of packaging.
What can't speak, can't lie. My stand. That's definitely, it was never a kilogram.
And Skyloop wants 2 ounces of sherbet lemons.
Right, I've got a
Right.
dog to walk.
Okay, right. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, especially to Olivia.
Yep.
When I hit the close, when I close the call, particularly everyone, just please wait a second until it says your audio has been uploaded, or I won't have it, and that would suck. Thanks, and bye for
So
now.
don't just close the window, Olivia. Just wait
Yeah,
until
it'll
it
only
says
take
it's all
2
done.
seconds.
Bye.
Bye.